The deep, resonant crackle of a wood fire begins, a steady, rhythmic popping of dry oak logs settling into glowing coals. Imagine the warm, dancing light and the comforting scent of wood smoke permeating the room as this story unfolds. The sound of shattering ceramic ripped through the fragile piece of our living room like a gunshot. One moment, I was placing the mismatched mug, the one with the chipped handle Jamie had painted for me in 3rd grade, carefully on the coffee table. The next, it was exploding against the stone fireplace hearth in a spray of jagged blue, fragments, and cold chamomile tea. I froze, mid-sentence, my hand still outstretched towards the space where the mug had been. My words, some placating comment about how maybe his history teacher was being unfair, but he still needed to turn in the assignment, died in my throat. Time seemed to fracture like the ceramic. Jamie stood across the room, chest heaving, face a mask of raw, terrifying fury I didn't recognize. His hands were clenched into white-knuckled fists at his sides, trembling. His eyes, usually a warm hazel flecked with gold like his father's, were dark, dilated pools of pure rage. The cozy lamplight, the dancing firelight, none of it touched him. He radiated a cold, volatile energy that seemed to suck the warmth from the room. "Just shut up, Mom," he roared, the sound raw and guttural, shredding the quiet evening air. "Just for once in your life, shut up and stop fixing everything." Fjakerf, words hit me like physical blows. They weren't just angry, they were venomous, dripping with a hatred that stole my breath. This wasn't the usual teenage sulk or the frustrated slamming of a door. This was seismic. This felt like the eruption of something deep, festering, and terrifyingly final. He didn't wait for a response. He spun on his heel, a blur of lanky limbs and vibrating fury, and stormed out of the room. A moment later, the slam of his bedroom door echoed through the house like a tomb sealing shut. I stood rooted to the spot, staring at the wreckage. The sharp blue shards glittered menacingly against the dark stone. A dark stain of tea bled into the rug. The fire popped loudly, a jarring counterpoint to the sudden, deafening silence in my own head. My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic bird trapped in a cage of shock and burgeoning hurt. Shut up? Stop fixing everything? Where had that come from? This wasn't about the history paper. This was something else. Something vast and ugly had just detonated between us, and I had no idea what the trigger was. My instinct, honed over 15 years of motherhood, was immediate. Fix it. Go after him. Reason with him. Wrap him in my arms and absorb the anger. Make it better. My feet actually twitched towards the hallway, but something stopped me. The sheer, naked hatred in his eyes. The finality of that slammed door. The shards of the mug he'd once made for me with such clumsy, earnest love. A symbol of something precious now violently destroyed. A cold dread pooled in my stomach. If I went up there now, what would happen? Would he scream worse things? Would he push me away with such force it would break something else? Would it make this irreparable? Trembling, I sank onto the sofa, the leather cool beneath me despite the fire's heat. My gaze remained fixed on the shattered mug. Each shard felt like a piece of my own heart. How had we gotten here? Jamie had always been intense, yes, passionate, prone to stomping and eye-rolling, and dramatic pronouncements about the injustices of curfews or chores. But this felt like a stranger inhabiting my son's body, a stranger filled with corrosive contempt for me. David found me like that an hour later, still staring at the debris, the untouched mug of now-cold tea sitting accusingly on the table. He'd been working late. "What happened?" he asked, his voice weary but alert, taking in the scene. The shards, my pale face, the palpable tension hanging thick in the fire-warmed air. "Jamie," my voice cracked. He threw it. The mug. Screamed at me to shut up, to stop fixing. Everything." The words sounded hollow, inadequate to convey the violence of the moment. David sighed, running a hand through his hair. He looked exhausted. "Again? What set him off this time, the history paper?" I think so. I was just trying to talk to him about it, suggest he talk to the teacher. Even as I said it, it sounded feeble, patronizing, fixing. He's been a powder keg for weeks, Sarah, David said, moving to the fireplace. He didn't touch me. He picked up the fireplace poker and nudged a log, sending a shower of sparks swirling up the chimney. Ever since, well, you know. His voice was tight. I did know. Ever since the argument. 3 weeks ago, right here in this room, with this same fire crackling obliviously. A stupid, escalating fight about money, about David's long hours, about my feeling like I was drowning in the mental load of parenting Jamie alone. Harsh words had been flung, words about resentment, about feeling taken for granted, about the suffocating weight of responsibility. Words we'd never spoken, aloud before, but that had clearly been simmering beneath the surface for months, maybe years. We'd gone to bed angry, locked in a cold war that had thawed only superficially since. We were careful, polite, tiptoeing around each other like unexploded bombs. We'd assumed Jamie hadn't heard much or hadn't understood. He'd been in his room with his headphones on. We'd been wrong. David's comment hung in the air. Ever since, well, you know, the implication was clear. Jamie's outburst was just more difficult teenage behavior. Another problem for me to handle, to fix. The resentment I'd felt during our argument flared, hot and sudden, momentarily eclipsing my hurt over Jamie. David nudged another log, the fire flaring brighter, casting long, dancing shadows that felt accusatory. I'll clean this up, he said finally, gesturing vaguely towards the shards. You should try to get some sleep. He'll probably be fine in the morning. Just hormones. He said it with a weary finality, the way one might dismiss a passing storm. Just hormones. The phrase landed like a dismissal. It minimized the terrifying fury I'd witnessed, the hatred in my son's eyes directed at me. It absolved him, and by extension perhaps absolved David too. But it didn't absolve me. The echo of Jamie's words, "Stop fixing everything," reverberated in my skull. Was that what he saw me as? A relentless, smothering force, constantly trying to mold him, control him, fix him? The thought was a fresh wound. I didn't sleep. I lay rigid in the dark, listening to the muffled sounds of David's breathing, and from down the hall, the low thump of bass from Jamie's room. Each beat felt like a physical vibration of his anger. The image of his face, contorted with rage, played on a loop behind my closed eyelids. But beneath the shock and hurt, a colder, more unsettling feeling began to seep in. Fear. Not fear of him, but fear for him. Fear that this rage was a symptom of something deeper, something broken inside him that I couldn't reach, couldn't fix. Fear that I had broken it. And then, cutting through the fear, a memory surfaced, sharp and unbidden. Not of Jamie as a child, but of me. Me at 15, standing in my own childhood kitchen, screaming at my mother. The details were hazy. Something about a forbidden concert, a grounding I felt was monumentally unjust. But the feeling was crystalline. A white-hot fury, a sense of being utterly misunderstood, trapped, suffocated by her rules, her expectations, her constant attempts to steer me, correct me, fix me. I remembered the look on her face, not anger, but a profound hurt, a bewildered devastation not unlike what I'd felt tonight. And I remembered the words I'd hurled, words designed to wound. You just want a robot. You don't even see me. Lying. There in the dark, the parallel was horrifying. Was I becoming my mother? Was Jamie becoming me? Was this some cruel generational echo? The thought was paralyzing. The fire in the living room had died to embers, but a cold fire of shame and dawning terrible understanding began to burn within me. Jamie's outburst wasn't just about a history paper. It wasn't just hormones. It was a scream from the depths of his being, a scream I had tragically, blindly failed to hear until it detonated. Stop fixing everything. It wasn't just criticism. It was a plea to be seen. Not as a problem to be solved, but as a person, whole and complex and struggling. The next morning dawned gray and brittle. Jamie didn't emerge for breakfast. David left early for work with a perfunctory kiss on my cheek and a muttered, "Try talking to him later." The house felt cavernous, filled with the oppressive silence of aftermath. The shards of the mug were gone, swept up by David, but the stain on the rug remained, a dark tea-colored Rorschach blot accusing me. I didn't try to talk to Jamie. I knew any attempt at my usual brand of fixing, reasoning, cajoling, offering solutions, would be gasoline on the embers of his anger. Instead, I moved through the day like a ghost. I made his favorite pasta for lunch and left it outside his door. It sat there untouched for hours, growing cold, a silent testament to the chasm between us. The fire remained unlit, the hearth cold and dark, mirroring the emptiness in the house and within me. David came home, took in the untouched plate still outside Jamie's door, the unlit fireplace, my silent presence. He frowned. "Still?" he asked, his voice laced with impatience. "He needs to get over himself, Sarah. He can't just sulk forever, and you can't just hover." He started building a fire, the dry wood snapping aggressively as he worked. His words stung. Hover. Another word for fixing? Was that all he saw? My attempt to give Jamie space, to not smother him with my usual problem-solving, was interpreted as weakness, as ineffective hovering. The familiar resentment towards David flared again, intertwined with my fear and confusion about Jamie. It felt like I was failing on all fronts, as a mother, as a wife. The fire David built crackled with a false cheerfulness that grated on my nerves. The stalemate stretched into a second day, then a third. Jamie emerged only for necessities, moving through the house like a sullen shadow, avoiding eye contact, radiating a hostility that was colder now, more deliberate than the initial explosion. He spoke only in monosyllables if spoken to. The silence was worse than the shouting. It was a wall, thick and high. On the fourth evening, David announced he was taking Jamie to his basketball game. Get him out of the house, he reasoned. Change of scenery. Do him good. He said it like prescribing medicine. Jamie didn't protest, just grabbed his gym bag with a stony expression. Watching them leave, the tension between father and son was palpable even in their silence. David's approach was pragmatic, dismissive of the emotional depth of the rupture. Jamie's silence felt like a deepening trench. As the garage door closed, the silence descended again, heavier than ever. The house felt like a museum of our fractured family. I wandered into the living room. The fire David had lit earlier was burning low, mostly glowing coals now, pulsing with a deep, quiet heat. I sank onto the sofa, staring into the embers. The rhythmic crackle, the deep orange glow, was hypnotic, almost meditative. In the quiet, with the oppressive weight of Jamie's absence and David's pragmatic distance pressing down, my mind finally stopped racing. The defensive hurt, the indignation, the frantic need to fix. It began to recede. In its place, a clearer, colder understanding began to crystallize, sharp as the shards David had swept away. Jamie's words weren't born in a vacuum. "Shut up! Stop fixing everything!" They were a reaction to years of my well-intentioned interference. How many times had I jumped in to solve his problems with friends? How many times had I rewritten his essays just to help? How many times had I offered unsolicited advice on his clothes, his hobbies, his feelings? I'd framed it all as love, as support. But seen through Jamie's eyes, through the lens of his burgeoning need for autonomy, it must have felt like control. Like I didn't trust him. Like I saw him only as a project, perpetually incomplete, perpetually needing my correction. My fixing wasn't love. It was suffocation. It was a denial of his right to be his own person, flaws and all. And then the devastating catalyst, the argument. He had heard us. He had understood. He'd heard the resentment in David's voice about carrying the financial burden, the weariness in mine about carrying the emotional load. He'd heard us reduce our marriage, the foundation of his world, to a ledger of grievances. He'd heard the unspoken message. This family is a burden. This love is conditional. This life we've built is heavy with regret. No wonder he exploded. His safe harbor had revealed itself to be a ship taking on water, captained by two people who seemed to resent the voyage. My attempts to fix his school problems after that must have felt grotesque. How could I fix his world when I couldn't, or wouldn't, fix the brokenness at its core? How could I offer platitudes about responsibility when he'd overheard us shirking ours towards each other? The realization was a gut punch. His rage wasn't just teenage angst, it was a mirror held up to my failures. My failure to truly see him, to respect his autonomy. My failure, alongside David, to safeguard the love and security that was his birthright. His outburst wasn't an attack. It was a desperate, distorted cry for help, a scream against the erosion of his world. He wasn't just angry at me. He was angry for the family he felt crumbling around him. And I had missed it. Utterly. I'd been too busy trying to fix the symptoms to see the disease. The fire popped, a loud snap in the quiet room startling me. A log collapsed in on itself, sending a fresh wave of warmth radiating out. Staring into the glowing heart of it, I thought about forgiveness. I'd always thought of it as something you offered after an apology, a gracious absolution for a wrong committed. But what Jamie had done, the violence of the act, the cruelty of his words, how could I forgive that? The hurt still felt fresh, a bruise on my soul. But the understanding dawning within me shifted the perspective. Could he forgive me? For years of unintentional smothering, for the erosion of his security caused by our marital discord, for failing to see his pain until it erupted in violence? The weight of that question was crushing. My own resentment, my own sense of being wronged, began to feel petty, self-absorbed. His outburst wasn't the root cause. It was the violent symptom of a sickness I had helped create. True forgiveness, I realized, staring into the forgiving glow of the embers, wasn't about excusing the act. It wasn't about pretending the shattered mug didn't matter, or that his words hadn't cut deep. It was about understanding the profound pain that drove the act. It was about recognizing my own complicity in creating that pain. It was about letting go of the need for him to be the first to apologize, the first to bend. It was about choosing, despite the hurt, to see him again, not the angry outburst, but the scared, hurting kid whose world felt like it was falling apart. It was about accepting that the path back wouldn't be through my fixing, but through my witnessing, my understanding, my unwavering presence. It was about offering an amnesty born not from weakness, but from the terrifying, humbling strength of unconditional love. It meant forgiving myself enough to stop hiding behind the label of fixer and to stand vulnerable and accountable before my son. It meant laying down my weapons, my solutions, my justifications, my hurt pride, and opening my hands empty and ready. It meant choosing the fire's warmth over the cold comfort of resentment. The sound of the garage door opening broke the spell. They were back. The basketball game hadn't magically fixed anything. Jamie walked in first, shoulders hunched, face closed, radiating defeat. David followed, looking frustrated. "He barely played," David muttered to me as Jamie stomped past us without a word, heading straight upstairs. Sulked on the bench the whole second half. Coach wasn't happy. The easy narrative, the game as a reset button, had failed. David's frustration was clear. He went to the fridge seeking solace in a beer. The coldness between us, the unresolved marital tension, thickened the air again. I looked at David, really looked at him. The tired lines around his eyes, the defensive set of his jaw. We were both hurting. We were both failing. And we were both part of the foundation Jamie was standing on as it cracked. Jamie didn't come down for dinner. The silence stretched, taut and uncomfortable. David ate quickly, the clatter of his fork loud in the quiet. He retreated to his study. I cleared the table slowly, the untouched plate at Jamie's place a silent accusation. The fire I'd lit, earlier more for my own solace than warmth, was burning steadily now, filling the room with its gentle light and comforting crackle. I knew what I had to do. It wasn't fixing, it wasn't hovering, it was stepping into the fire. I made 2 mugs of hot chocolate. Not the quick microwave kind, but the real stuff. Melting dark chocolate into warm milk, a splash of vanilla, a tiny pinch of salt. I carried them carefully upstairs. His door was closed. I knocked softly. No answer. I knocked again, a little firmer. Jamie, can I come in? I brought hot chocolate. My voice sounded unnaturally loud in the hallway. A long pause. Then, so faint I almost missed it. Whatever. I turned the knob and pushed the door open slowly. He was sitting on his bed, back against the headboard, knees drawn up, staring blankly at his phone. He didn't look up. The room was dark except for the dim screen glow. The air felt stale, thick with unresolved anger and despair. I walked in, placing one mug carefully on his cluttered desk. I held the other one, needing its warmth. I didn't sit on the bed. I leaned against his dresser, putting a little space between us. The firelight from downstairs cast a faint, flickering glow up the stairwell, just enough to see the rigid set of his jaw. I'm not here to talk about the history paper, I began, my voice low, steady. Or the mug. I took a breath, gathering the courage forged in front of the living room fire. I'm here because I think I understand why you got so angry. He didn't move, but I saw his shoulders tense almost imperceptibly. He still didn't look at me. I was wrong, Jamie, I said, the words feeling both terrifying and liberating. For a long time, I've been wrong. I thought I was helping, solving your problems, giving advice. I thought it was love. But I see now. I see how it must have felt. Like I didn't think you could handle things yourself. Like I was always trying to change you or control you. Like I didn't trust you. I paused, the silence heavy. I'm so sorry. Truly sorry. For suffocating you. For not seeing you. Still no movement. But his knuckles, gripping the phone, were white. And, I continued, the harder part, I know you heard us. That night, your dad and me, fighting. I saw his breath catch. He finally looked up, just for a fleeting second, his eyes wide and startled in the gloom, before looking fiercely back at his phone. You heard things. Awful things. Things no kid should ever hear their parents say about each other, or about the weight of this family. I am so sorry for that, Jamie. More sorry than I can possibly say. We failed you. We made you feel unsafe in your own home. We made you feel like a burden. That is on us. That is our failure, not yours. My voice trembled now, but I pressed on. Your anger. It scared me. It hurt me. But I understand it now. I understand that it wasn't just about me nagging you about homework. It was about everything, about feeling unseen, about feeling like the foundation was cracking, about being terrified and having no way to say it except to break something. I gestured vaguely, encompassing the room, the past week, the shattered mug. I get it. And I am so sorry we put you in that position. Sorry for the years of smothering, and sorry for the night we broke your trust. Silence. Thick, profound silence. The only sounds were the faint crackle of the fire downstairs and the frantic beating of my own heart. He hadn't thrown me out. He hadn't screamed. He was listening. That was something. I don't know how to fix what we broke, I whispered, the truth raw and exposed. I wish I did, but I know it won't be by me trying to fix you anymore. It has to start with me. With us. Fixing ourselves, learning to do better, learning to be better. For you. For each other. I took a shaky breath. I love you, Jamie. More than anything. And I'm not going anywhere. Even when it's hard. Especially then. I pushed myself off the dresser. The hot chocolate's there if you want it. It's the good kind. I turned to leave, giving him the space he clearly still needed. Mom. The single word, hoarse and quiet, stopped me in my tracks. I turned back. He still wasn't looking at me, but his head was bowed now, his forehead resting on his knees. His shoulders were shaking silently. I didn't move closer. I didn't try to hug him. I just stood there, a silent witness to his pain. The fire crackled. Comfortingly downstairs, a steady, persistent sound that seemed to fill the charged silence between us. It was the sound of warmth enduring, of light holding back the dark, of destruction, the consumed wood, giving way to warmth and light. After a long moment, he raised his head slightly. His face was streaked with tears in the dim light. He didn't look furious anymore. He looked shattered, exhausted, young. It felt like you guys hated each other, he choked out, his voice thick with tears. Like you hated this. He gestured around his room, encompassing his life, our family. Like I was just this thing making it all harder. The raw pain in his voice was a knife to my heart. Oh, Jamie, I breathed, my own tears falling freely now. No, never. We love you so much, and we love each other. We got lost. We got tired. We said terrible, stupid things we didn't mean. We forgot how to talk to each other, not at each other. We failed you. We failed each other. But we don't hate you. We could never hate you. Or this life. We need to learn how to do it better. How to carry the weight without dropping it or blaming each other. I took a step closer, but still didn't touch him. Can you forgive us? For being so stupid? For making you feel so unsafe? He didn't answer for a long time. He wiped his face roughly with the sleeve of his hoodie. He looked at the mug of hot chocolate on his desk. Then slowly, hesitantly, he uncurled himself and swung his legs over the side of the bed. He walked to the desk, picked up the mug, and cradled it in his hands, staring into its depths. The steam curled gently in the dim light. I threw your mug, he mumbled, not looking at me. The one I made you. I didn't mean to. I just snapped. I saw red. Everything just exploded. His voice was thick with shame now, mixing with the residual anger and fear. I shouldn't have said those things. To shut up. That was really bad. The apology, halting and imperfect, landed softly. It wasn't an excuse. It was an acknowledgement. It was a tiny, fragile bridge. I know, I said softly. And it hurt. A lot. But I understand why it happened. That doesn't make it okay, but it makes it understandable. I took another step closer. The mug, it was just a thing, Jamie. A thing you made me when you were little. What matters is you. You're not broken. You were hurting. And we caused that hurt. That's what we need to fix. Not the mug. Not the history paper. Us. He finally looked up at me, his eyes red-rimmed and vulnerable. The mask of rage was gone, replaced by a profound weariness and a flicker of something else. Hope? How? He whispered. The question hung in the air. Simple, monumental, terrifying. I don't have all the answers, I admitted, sitting cautiously on the edge of his bed, still respecting his space. But it starts with this, with talking. With listening. Really listening, without me trying to jump in with a solution every 5 seconds. I managed a small, shaky smile. And maybe your dad and I need to talk too. Really talk, without the yelling, about how we got so lost. Jamie nodded slowly, taking a tentative sip of the hot chocolate. It was scary, he said quietly. Hearing you guys like that, it felt like the bottom fell out. I know, sweetheart, I said, the endearment slipping out naturally for the first time in weeks. I know, and I am so sorry we did that to you. I reached out slowly, giving him time to pull away. I placed my hand gently over his where it rested on the mug. His skin was warm. He didn't pull away. He looked down at our hands, then back up, at me. The connection was tentative, fragile, but real. The fire crackled persistently downstairs, a steady, comforting heartbeat beneath our fragile truce. Forgiveness. I understood in that quiet, tear-streaked moment, illuminated by the faint, Glow from the hall wasn't a single act. It wasn't a grand pronouncement. It was a choice made again and again, moment by moment. It was choosing to understand the wound that caused the lashing out. It was acknowledging my own part in creating that wound. It was letting go of the demand for perfect remorse before offering compassion. It was holding space for his pain and shame without drowning in my own. It was accepting that the shards of the mug and the shards of our trust might never fit back together perfectly, but that something new, something stronger forged in the heat of understanding, could be built from the pieces. It was choosing the warmth, however faint, over the cold void of resentment. It was sitting in the quiet, fire-lit aftermath, holding my son's hand, not because the storm was over, but because we had finally found the courage to face it together, without pretending we could control the wind. True forgiveness wasn't the end of the story. It was the difficult, necessary beginning of the next chapter. And for the first time in weeks, the fire's warmth finally reached me, seeping past the hurt, promising not an easy fix, but the enduring, resilient glow of love choosing to mend. The fire crackles steadily, deeply, the sound softening gradually but remaining present, a comforting, enduring heartbeat beneath the fragile new beginning, fading slowly as the story settles into quiet. Hope.